The man had been walking along the river's edge when a faint rustle and a low, uneven groan pulled him from the quiet of the dawn. Through the morning mist, a shape emerged at the water's edge, half hidden by reeds and low shrubs. A young male lion lay sprawled on the damp sand, his flank pressed to the earth, chest rising and falling in shallow, labored breaths. The soft sound of the river flowing beside him seemed to echo the fragile rhythm of his life. His fur, usually golden and vibrant, was matted and darkened by moisture, clinging to the contours of a body that trembled with every uneven inhalation. One paw was twisted at an unnatural angle, claws partially embedded in the soft soil. His muzzle quivered, lips pulled back slightly, exposing teeth that seemed less threatening now, more vulnerable than formidable. The man's heart clenched. Local warnings rang in his ears. Approaching a wounded predator was dangerous, perhaps deadly. Yet the sight of the lion, so still and fragile, stirred a quiet urgency within him. He lowered himself to the sand, careful not to startle the animal, every movement measured and deliberate. "Easy, easy, boy," he whispered, voice barely audible over the murmuring river. Around them, the morning carried the smells of wet earth and river, the faint scent of decaying leaves mingling with the crispness of dew. The air was cool against his skin, carrying a faint metallic tang that hinted at blood. Small birds flitted nearby, alert but hesitant, as if recognizing the delicate tension between the man and the lion. The lion's amber eyes opened slightly, catching the light, flicking toward the man with a mixture of curiosity and unease. The movement was small but deliberate, and the man felt a subtle shift in the fragile balance between caution and trust. He noticed a shallow rise and fall in the chest, the shallow breaths betraying pain and exhaustion. He moved slowly closer, knees pressing gently into the damp ground. The lion flinched at the faintest motion, ears flicking, tail twitching in anxious rhythm. Yet there was no growl, no defensive stance, only the raw vulnerability of a creature far from its strength. The man's hands hovered near the lion, not to touch but to show patience, a silent offer of care. The river whispered along the bank, water glinting pale gold as the sun rose higher, and a soft wind rustled through reeds and low branches. Every sound seemed magnified in the quiet space, the delicate symphony of life and potential danger. The man's eyes traced the line of the lion's body, noting the subtle shifts in weight, the faint tremor in limbs, the shallow quivers that spoke more eloquently than any roar ever could. A low groan escaped the lion again, and the man's heart tightened. He could not turn away, could not ignore the quiet distress. He had been warned he could die if he approached, but in that moment, fear was outweighed by something softer, something stronger, the urgent call to help, to witness life in its fragile, urgent truth. For a long moment, they simply regarded one another, separated by instinct, fear, and hope. The man's voice returned in a gentle murmur. "You're not alone." The words were almost swallowed by the river's rush, but somehow they reached the lion. A flicker of recognition passed through amber eyes, a delicate acknowledgement of presence, patience, and the first fragile thread of trust. The lion groaned again, quieter this time, as if acknowledging the presence of the man who had approached so carefully. As he moved closer, the wound became visible, a deep gash across the shoulder, the fur darkened by dried and fresh blood. The skin around it was swollen and tender, raw in the dim morning light. Small flies hovered, circling in a subtle menace that seemed almost oblivious to the gravity of the moment. The man knelt beside the animal, careful not to make sudden movements. He inspected the injury silently, eyes tracing the line of torn tissue and bruised muscle. It was clear that left alone, the lion would not survive long, and yet every step forward was laced with danger. The local's warnings echoed once more, but he set them aside. There was only the patient rhythm of breath and the delicate trust forming in the space between human and predator. He pulled a strip of cloth from his pack, dampened it with clean water, and slowly began to dab at the wound. The lion flinched slightly, muscles tensing, but did not pull away. Each careful movement was a negotiation, every touch measured and respectful, seeking not to force compliance but to earn consent. The river beside them murmured in constant accompaniment, a soft, hypnotic soundtrack to their fragile partnership. The air was heavy with the scent of earth and blood, and the subtle sweetness of crushed reeds. Sunlight filtered through the trees, touching the lion's tawny fur and highlighting every quiver of muscle, every slight shiver of pain. The man's hands moved steadily, feeling the warmth and tremor beneath the fur, attuned to the lion's responses. The animal was tense, but not defiant, his head lowering slightly as if yielding to the gentleness of care. For a brief moment, the man paused and observed the lion fully. Amber eyes half-closed, pupils flicking with caution, ears twitching at every distant sound, tail flicking slowly. He noted the rise and fall of the chest, the faint moans escaping lips and throat, each a soft testament to resilience. "Almost there, hold still," the man whispered softly. The lion's breath shuddered, a subtle acknowledgement, though no movement beyond the slight lowering of his head suggested comprehension. It was a quiet bond, fragile yet undeniable, built not on words but on patience, timing, and careful observation. A small breeze shifted across the riverbank, carrying the mingled scents of wet earth, reeds, and the faint, metallic tang of blood. The lion's muscles gradually loosened, the tension ebbing slowly as he adjusted to the rhythm of the man's care. Each soft exhale, each careful blink of his amber eyes, was a dialogue of trust, a quiet communication across species. Hours seemed to pass in silence, broken only by soft murmurs and the occasional hiss of the river. The wound was cleaned as best as possible with the limited supplies, and the lion's breathing, though still shallow, began to appear steadier. The man's own heart felt the weight of the risk he had taken, but also the unspoken understanding. The fragility of life was matched by the depth of connection that could exist when fear was met with patience. By late morning, the lion shifted slightly, testing the strength of his legs. The man remained still, ready to support but giving space. The fragile trust they had begun to build was evident in the absence of defensive growls, the subtle lowering of the head, the quiet acknowledgement that he was no longer entirely alone. The river continued its endless whisper beside them, the wind rustling the reeds, and the forest seemed to breathe with a careful, measured pause. The man watched, aware that each small step forward might be the difference between life and death. And in that quiet vigil, he understood that courage was not always loud. It could be gentle, patient, and profoundly human. The lion groaned softly, shifting his weight in the sand, muscles trembling with effort. His attempt to rise was hesitant, each movement a negotiation between instinct and injury. The man quickly stepped closer, placing a steadying hand beneath the animal's chest. "Easy, easy," he murmured, voice low and calm, matching the rhythm of the lion's breath. The riverbank was uneven, slick with mud and morning dew, and every step carried risk. The lion's amber eyes flicked toward the water, then back at the man, pupils wide with both wariness and exhaustion. He leaned heavily on the man's support, each motion revealing the fragility of his condition. Yet despite the obvious pain, there was a spark of resilience in those eyes, a desire to stand, to continue, to survive. The man guided the lion carefully, his hands firm but gentle. He felt the subtle tension of the muscles under fur, the slight tremor of paws sinking into soft earth, the uneven pulse of a creature testing its strength. Around them, the morning chorus continued, the soft rustle of reeds, the distant call of birds, and the constant whisper of the river. The sounds framed the delicate tension of their shared movement, each note a quiet witness to courage unfolding. Every step forward was a careful negotiation. The lion paused frequently, his head dipping, tail flicking in subtle anxiety. The man adjusted his stance, leaning into the animal's weight just enough to prevent collapse but not so much as to impose. A few droplets of blood fell from the shoulder wound, tracing irregular paths across the sand, a stark reminder of the cost of every movement. Despite the danger, the lion never growled, never lashed out. His eyes remained steady, flicking occasionally toward the man, a quiet acknowledgement of support and presence. The man's voice remained soft, almost hypnotic in its repetition, steady, just steady. It was less a command than a promise, a tether anchoring them both in the uncertain space between danger and survival. As they moved further from the water's edge, the ground firmed slightly, offering better footing. The lion tested each leg carefully, muscles straining but gradually strengthening with every step. The man stayed close, adjusting subtly to the animal's movements, matching weight and rhythm in an unspoken dialogue of care and caution. Sunlight broke through the mist now, illuminating the lion's wet fur in streaks of gold and copper. The scent of damp earth and river lingered, mixing with the metallic tang of blood, reminding the man of the stakes. Every careful motion, every soft exhale, reinforced the fragile trust forming between them. By mid-morning, the lion had taken several unassisted steps, though each was tentative and deliberate. The man took a half step back, letting the animal carry his own weight, offering support only if needed. The rhythm of their movement was slow, cautious, yet charged with quiet triumph. For a moment, the man allowed himself to observe fully, the lion's proud head held slightly higher, the subtle strength returning to his legs, the tentative trust mirrored in amber eyes. He had been warned, he had risked much, yet in that shared journey along the riverbank, the line between danger and hope had shifted. Courage, he realized, was often measured not by grand gestures but by patient guidance through small, delicate trials. The lion paused mid-step, shifting his massive head slightly as if weighing the distance between instinct and comfort. His amber eyes flicked toward the man, pupils dilated, muscles taut yet relaxed in subtle acknowledgement. Then, slowly, with deliberate caution, he lowered his head until it rested gently against the man's side. The gesture was quiet, unexpected, and profoundly moving. The weight was substantial, yet not burdensome, a living testament to the fragile trust they had built together. The man remained perfectly still, allowing the lion's action to define the moment. A soft exhale escaped his lips, and he murmured, almost as a meditation, "You all right? It's all right." The lion's breathing synchronized gradually with his, shallow but steady, the tremors of pain eased by proximity and gentle reassurance. The river continued its constant whisper beside them, a soft soundtrack to the quiet miracle of connection. The sunlight dappled through the leaves, illuminating droplets of water on the lion's fur, the subtle sheen highlighting every muscle, every curve of strength returning to a body long weakened. Each small shift, each quiet adjustment, carried meaning, trust not forced, but freely given, fragile yet unshakable in that moment. Around them, the forest seemed to pause. A bird called softly from the canopy, leaves rustled with a warm breeze, and the faint scent of damp earth mingled with the metallic tang of dried blood. The man's hands rested lightly against the lion, feeling the pulse of life, the steady rhythm of breath, the subtle tension of muscles relaxing. For a moment, the boundary between species seemed to dissolve, leaving only mutual recognition and care. The lion's tail flicked slowly, brushing the ground, then curled slightly around the man's leg, a gesture both protective and tentative. No growls, no defensive movements, just quiet acceptance. The man's heart swelled with understanding. It was not subjugation, not obedience, it was a wordless acknowledgement of patience, courage, and respect. Minutes passed without interruption, measured in the gentle sway of the river and the slow exhale of the forest. The man's gaze met the lion's, and in that brief connection, he recognized a silent communication older than words, rooted in instinct and empathy. The injured lion had chosen to lean into him, to share the fragile space between predator and human, and that choice carried weight heavier than any roar. A soft breeze stirred, carrying the earthy aroma of wet soil, reeds, and distant wildflowers. The lion shifted slightly, adjusting his head but never removing it, as if claiming a quiet sanctuary in the man's presence. The man remained still, feeling the remarkable responsibility and gift of this trust. After several minutes, the lion finally lifted his head, stretching slightly, muscles rippling with the return of cautious strength. Yet the connection lingered in the way his eyes met the man's one last time, a silent promise of recognition, of shared struggle, and of understanding. The river murmured beside them, the sunlight warmed the damp earth, and the forest exhaled softly, carrying the quiet miracle of this improbable bond. In that moment, the man understood fully that courage and compassion could coexist in silence, in patience, in the steady rhythm of hands, breath, and trust. The lion had offered him something rare, something profound, the quiet gesture of belief that, despite danger and injury, connection could transcend fear. By late afternoon, the lion had regained enough strength to move independently, though each step remained measured and deliberate. His shoulder wound, though still tender, no longer impeded the rhythm of his stride. The man observed from a short distance, hands resting lightly on his pack, body tense yet calm, attuned to every subtle shift of weight, every flick of tail, every flicker of amber eyes. The river beside them shimmered in the slanting light, the current whispering against rocks and reeds. Birds called in the distance, and the scent of damp earth and sun-warmed foliage mingled with the lingering metallic tang of the lion's injury. It was a quiet, vibrant world, alive with possibility and gentle danger alike. The lion paused once, head turning toward the man. There was no hesitation, no plea, no roar, only a soft, steady gaze that spoke of acknowledgement, of recognition, of trust earned and given. For a long moment, the man and the lion simply regarded one another, two lives connected in the fragile space between instinct and empathy. Then, with deliberate grace, the lion stepped forward. Each paw sank slightly into the soft soil, muscles flexing, body rising with newfound strength. The man took a careful step back, giving space, watching as the creature he had aided reclaimed its own rhythm. The sun broke through the trees in golden streaks, illuminating fur, leaves, and river in a warm, gentle glow. "Go, you're free now," the man whispered softly, almost to himself. The lion's ears flicked at the sound, then lifted his head, moving with quiet confidence. Step by careful step, he walked into the forest beyond the riverbank, each motion fluid, a testament to resilience and the quiet miracle of recovery. The man stayed where he was, breathing in the warmth of the late afternoon sun, feeling the pulse of life still vibrating in his chest. The forest carried on around him, the rustle of leaves, the distant hum of insects, the soft chorus of a world untouched by human urgency. And yet, in that stillness, the memory of amber eyes, gentle trust, and steady breath remained, luminous and indelible. The lion disappeared into the dappled light of the forest, tall grass parting gently as he moved, his gait steady and purposeful. The man watched until he was just a silhouette against the golden horizon, a living reminder of courage, patience, and the quiet power of connection. As he turned to walk back along the riverbank, the man carried the moment with him silently, a soft, glowing imprint on his memory. It was not a triumph of conquest, nor a story of grand heroics. It was a story of trust, of patience, and of the extraordinary gentleness that could exist between human and wild, when courage met compassion in quiet, deliberate measure. The river continued to murmur, the forest breathed softly, and the man moved forward, step by careful step, knowing he had witnessed something rare, a life saved, a bond formed, and a quiet moment that would remain, luminous and alive, forever.